Are you taking notes?
Yes, yes. You will need your notebook today. Chris, will you lift the lid on that mixer to turn it off, please? All right, so here's what we're doing. So most of you are in the process of doing it, but you are cleaning out your porcelain slip container. People who are at home, don't dump that slip down your drain. Dump it in the garbage, scrape out as much as you can into the garbage. It's okay, it can be thrown away. And then, oh, actually, people at home, you have separate containers for each of your slips. So never mind, you don't even need to dump out your porcelain. These guys do, because they only have one slip container. So never mind, you'll be slaking down your raku object, the little bone dry object you made to represent your future, in your second slip container, because I gave you 3 slip containers. So everybody should put their future object in the little bit of warm water. Leave it undisturbed. Just set it to the side. You can keep the lid off of it if you want to watch it slake during the next 10 to 20 minutes while I'm doing my little demo. And then hopefully at the end of that time, you'll have some good slip to shake up and then use. But you'll just leave it for now. Let it do its thing. Let science be science. Let your clay slip. You are going to need notebooks today, so grab your ceramic notebook, the one you took notes in and did sketches in yesterday. You're going to be doing a little bit more writing, maybe finalizing some sketches, doing a little additional sketching today. And you will actually begin with working with clay today. You will begin this project. So I mentioned this yesterday. I know I've mentioned it on and off throughout the try, but this is the project we're doing with raku clay, which means this is another piece that's going to get fired outside. It's going to get fired in a slightly different way than your horsehair piece. It's still going to get fired and pulled out while it's glowing hot, but these are going to have glaze on them. And the glazes, when they get pulled out the kiln, the glazes turn all coppery, metallic-y, rainbow colors, crackle, all sorts of really cool special effects. And the thing about raku is it's not food safe because of that process where it's pulled out and it goes into a garbage can full of sawdust, which immediately ignites on fire. So the pieces that come out of a raku firing, definitely not food safe. So that's why for this project, we're doing a sculpture, because it's not going to be food safe. It's not going to hold food or any sort of thing like that. So purely a decorative object is what we're working on here. So you'll find that when you're working with the raku clay, it is kind of gritty, and it's gritty, it has that grog in it because of the fact that it has to withstand that very violent firing process where it gets fired up to 1800 degrees in about 45 minutes, and then it gets plucked out of the fire and it goes to the air temperature, whatever the air temperature is outside. So it crash cools. And so any other normal clay, like stoneware or earthenware, or I guess those are the other two, that would crack if it went through that crash cooling process. But raku, because it has the rocks in it, is really, really rugged and strong. But even though the clay is really rugged and strong, we still need to construct it extra strong too, because we're going to be lifting your sculptures out with tongs. We just need them to be really as strong and as secure as possible. So as you're working on this project, you got to use this new raku slip that you're just making right now, and you got to score and slip everything incredibly well. Really, really strong connections. So let's move on. Find the page where you did your sketches yesterday, or the next page if you don't have room, because I'm going to review the artists that we talked about and the different styles and kind of ways that they work, because you might find that there's one way out of all of these, it kind of seems like it's going to work well for you. So I'd like you to jot down Austin Coudrier is his last name, but you don't need to write his last name. So Austin is a guy, and then write down these bullet points. These are the things that he does in his work that kind of are his aesthetic and his way of working. So Austin Coudrier's work is inspired by architecture. It's rigid. The pieces are straight. It's very geometric. And it's really obviously planned out ahead of time. There's not a lot of spontaneity to it. There's a structure, just like when you're building a building, you need a plan, and you follow that plan. The coils sometimes act like scaffolding around a vessel. So in this project, if you wanted to have maybe a little bit of function, you could build a vessel and then have your coil work, your motifs, your modules kind of surrounding that vessel. So maybe it could hold pencils, or it could hold pocket change, or it could hold your phone or something like that. But the primary aspect of this piece does need to be the coil work, the modules, the motifs that are going to be repeated and create this positive space, negative space design. But if you want to have something that's also a vessel that's built by coils or slabs or whatever, that's fine. And then final characteristic of Austin's work, the spaces are equally as important as the coils. The coils kind of act like lines, right? And those spaces are an equally important part of the design. So big spaces, small spaces, those same space shapes are repeated, so that not only are the lines forming a motif, a repeated motif, but the spaces are forming a repeated motif. So those are some of the characteristics of Austin's work. If his work really draws you in and you find his style of working very intriguing, maybe this would be something that helps guide you as you're trying to figure out, what are you going to do? Where are you going to place those coils? What's your game plan? Maybe another 30 seconds or so to finish writing, and then we'll move on to the next artist. Somebody mentioned yesterday that it was hard to tell how big this piece was. I think was it you, Bree, that mentioned it was really hard to tell the scale. So I looked it up online last night, and this is the size of a mug. In fact, actually, this is what he would call a mug. Like, clearly a not super functional mug, but it's his version of what a handle for a mug might be. All right, so let's move on to the second artist. I'm going to have you write her name and her characteristics too. This is SHIYUAN's work. SHIYUAN's work is definitely inspired by nature. A very stark contrast to Austin's work, which is very mechanical and architectural. SHIYUAN's work is inspired by nature, and so consequently, there's a lot of curves. So maybe you're more drawn to flowing, curving lines. Her shapes or her motifs start small. If you can see the arches that are her primary motif, start small in the center, and then they grow bigger as they grow out from that center point, kind of like the rings on a tree. The rings on a tree obviously start really small, where the tree is small, and then those rings get bigger as the tree grows bigger. And then fourth characteristic that I think is really important about her work, the struts. So these support structures that come out and support the arches are just as equally important for strength of the piece, because obviously you need a lot of struts to support these delicate shapes, but they're also an important part of the design. They create this rhythm, this repetition that helps lead our eye around the work. And so those struts they have two equally important purposes, strength and design. And that's something you're going to have to think about as you start building. Today, we might just be building the bottom part of our sculpture, so there might not be a tremendous need for a lot of struts today. There will be some, because you want that base to be very, very strong. But as you continue to build upward, you're going to need to figure out what can you make for a strut that's going to support the thing that you're building vertically upon, but also so that strut seems visually pleasing, part of the design, not a distraction. So those are some characteristics of SHIYUAN's work. I'll give you another 20 seconds or so to finish writing, and then we'll move on to the final artist, Shannon Goff. So with both SHIYUAN's work and Austin's work, everything was really clearly fairly planned. Like there was a structure there and a game plan, and they followed the game plan. Shannon's work is a lot more inspired by chaos and unpredictability. So please write Shannon's name. Her last name is Goff if you want to write that. Inspired by chaos and unpredictability. So she builds in a way that's a lot more intuitive. She kind of makes it up as she goes along. Like if she sees a gap, she'll just fill it with a little piece of clay. But yet, there clearly are repeated shapes, repeated motifs, repeated modules that keep the build consistent. So her work is inspired by chaos and unpredictability. The coils and spaces are tangled and interwoven. You can't really untangle or separate the different motifs because they're woven together like a tangled ball of yarn. The motifs are repeated. As in this piece here, the motifs seem to be this arch shape or circular shape. They're repeated, but they're not identical to each other because each one might be bigger, one might be smaller, one might be angled a little bit more, one might be intertwined with a second motif. So as she makes it up as she goes, it kind of, the motifs, while they're repeated, they're made to tailor fit the situation they're being inserted into, the compositions as they go. So she's kind of making it up as she goes. And so the fourth characteristic is the sculpture is created on the fly with less pre-planning, more gut intuition. So that seems like more the way you want to work. What you want to establish is what is your motif, what is your shape that you're going to repeat, and then keep that in mind as you build and kind of feel it out as you go. Get a piece on there, see where it looks like the next piece needs to go, and then continue and continue and continue. So some people are more planners, some people are more go with the flowers, and so either one is okay, as long as you have a motif that you can repeat. So you have that modular construction component. Also equally interesting or equally important is your positive and negative space. So your positive space are your coils that you're going to be adding. Your negative space are the spaces between the coils. So don't forget about that. Don't forget about those little windows that you're going to trap with your struts and your pieces to make the piece something that is intriguing to look at, but also intriguing to look through. That's equally important. So here is what we're going to be doing for today. I'm going to ask that you use your raku clay, okay? And people who are here, I'll show you where the raku clay is in a little bit. People who are at home, you have a small bag, a Ziploc baggie of raku clay, and I wrote raku on it. So that's what you're using. And you're going to make 10 coils today. We're going to work, I think, if it seems like it's a good pace. Again, this is the first time I've ever done the project this way. So you're kind of helping me learn if this is really going to work. But I think it would be a good pace to do approximately 10 coils a day. And we'll build with those 10 coils a day. So you're going to make 10 coils that are approximately the thickness of your index finger. That's a pretty good, workable, strong thickness. And if you have a board, you can use it to make your coils consistent. And I'll demonstrate that when we get over to the demo. Then you're going to have to start making some decisions. What is your primary motif? What is your module based upon? Is it based upon circles, triangles, ovals? Is it based on branches? If you want to base something on nature, is it based on the wind, waves, pebbles? Do you want to make something based on COVID-19 and that like bacteria molecule shape? It really can be anything. Like your inspiration for your motif can literally come from anywhere. It can come from a Post-it note. You can make a bunch of squares, right? So your inspiration really can come from anywhere. But that kind of needs to be nailed down because today we're going to create the footprint. The footprint is the base that the sculpture will be built upon. So the footprint should relate to your motif and yet be strong and stable and able to give you multiple opportunities to build. So this was my first sketch. I really thought I wanted to do something with concentric circles. So, so this was kind of what I thought my module or my motif would look like, and then it would be built upon there. And then this is what my base was going to be, the footprint. These would be all made out of coils. And then I realized that it looked like a Pokeball. So then I decided that maybe I didn't want to do a Pokeball sculpture. So I changed up my idea. Oh, people at home, you want to see my Pokeball? I did not show it, sorry. No Pokeballs. So then my second idea was to do something based on nature, to do a forest. So I wanted to do a footprint that kind of looked like the top of a tree and had some branch shapes going through it. And then where all the circles are, that's where I plan to have it. So it'll be really like this. So there'll be trees growing up from where those little circles are. And so when it is standing up, it'll look something like that I drew right there. But it's the footprint that I wanted to plan out today because that's what I'm going to be making out of coils today. So your footprint needs to be not too big, okay? So this is about as big as you would want it to be. It needs to be big enough or not any bigger than your tray that you have, because it has to be built on this tray. It's going to be too fragile to build and then lift around without a tray underneath it. So people at home, your base can't be bigger than this. And then once you've made that footprint, you've scored and slipped, you have struts. That's really, in my drawing, that's what the branches are. The branches are really struts, but they're decorative struts. And then you're going to be figuring out how are you going to build up from that? What are your pieces that are going to be coming together? You probably won't make any vertical building today. We'll probably just work on making that footprint today and getting that done. So you're going to use all 10 of your coils. If you want to start building vertical, you certainly can. If you just want to build the bottom part today, and if that doesn't use all 10 of your coils, that's fine too. And then take a photo of that. Take a photo of your footprint for today for your 20 points. So come on over here, and I'm going to demonstrate a few of those things a little bit more clearly. Gather as close as you can around table 9 while still socially distancing. People at home, I'm going to bring you with me. And see, Adrian, would you mind flipping on the lights, please? All right. Thank you. So people at home, this is your raku bag. It looks like this. This is not a lot of clay. So you're going to keep your sculpture maybe a little bit more on the small side. People who are here, you're going to have access to a little bit more raku clay, so you can build your piece to be a little bit bigger. People at home, if you want to come in and get additional raku clay, you certainly can. I have that for you. Okay, so I'm going to start by making my coils, and I'm maybe just going to start with making 5 coils, and we'll see where that takes me. 10 might be overly ambitious, I don't know, especially with the limited amount of clay that the people at home have. All right, so I'm going to start making my coils, just rolling them in my hand and then moving it to the table. And if they start to turn into an oval, I'm just going to stop rolling, press that ovalness out of it, and then keep stretching. I'm using the palms of my hands because it's flatter. This is a technique I thought we could try, though. If you have a wood board at home, this is another way to make your coil of clay. No, I haven't really tried this before, but I had a brainstorm in the middle of last night, like, oh, what if we used a board? What if that was a great way to make a coil? And I'm realizing it's maybe not as good as I thought it was in my dream last night. I think your hand is better. All right, forget that. It'll make it strong. Actually, this is an idea that you could do once you have kind of got your coil to be about the thickness of your index finger. You can use that wood board to compact it and make it nice and strong. So that might be a thing to do. But if you don't have a board at home, it's okay. My coil, this coil, by the way, you can see it's skinnier here. So I just want to keep the more consistent part of my coil. So I'm just going to chop off that extra bit. So I'll make a few more coils. This clay is really firm, so that's great. That means it's going to be good to build with. But it also means that if we let these coils sit out forever, they're going to get dry a lot quicker. So just keep that in mind as you're making your coils. Maybe making 10 ahead of time is too much, because if you're not going to use them, they're going to dry out and they're not going to be very useful. So let's see, cut off these ends and maybe cut that off about there. All right, I'm gonna make one more coil. I don't know that I need 10. I'll make more if I need them, but this seems like enough to be able to make this shape. I don't know, maybe I'm guessing wrong, but I think it looks pretty good. So, and it's not too bad. Maybe I'll keep the rest of it. Okay, so now we get to the actual building. So I have my footprint laid out here. I would encourage you to draw your footprint in the shape and the size that you want so you can lay your coils on it and be real accurate, especially if you're doing something like a circle. Like I literally traced something that was a circle, so I got a perfect circle. Don't just invent something like square or triangle or circle just by like freehand coiling it. You're gonna be much more accurate with something like that that's geometric and kind of looks like it's supposed to be perfect. Do some drawing with a ruler and actually make it perfect or trace something. With something like I've invented here, it's more of an organic shape. So who knows what it's supposed to look like, right? I can kind of invent it as I go. So I'm just laying my coil on top of this shape that I've invented, which is meant to look like the top of a tree. And I'm just ripping off where there is extra. And I have my slip that I've made here. See how it's slaked down now? So this has been slaking. For me, I did this about maybe half an hour ago. So yours should be slaking down pretty well too by the time we're done with all this. Just gonna give it a little shake. So now I have my really nice raku slip. I'm gonna take my fork, I'm gonna score where the pieces come together. Again, really important that your score marks are really deep. I'm gonna do my melding and I'm gonna score where this comes together. And I'm gonna do my melding. It's kind of up to you if you want to wrap that extra coil around your connection points for melding purposes. This kind of dips where it came together because one coil was smaller than the other. So I might take some of this extra clay that I had cut off and just patch it in and make it the same thickness. So it's more of a continuous piece. All right, now I'm going to start to make my branches. So I'm going to start making my pieces. I'm just ripping them so that they are approximately the right shape and size. And then I'll start scoring and slipping them together. So I'll start with the bigger pieces. Here and here. Again, score and slip. Really, really important that you've got strong connections. Score, slip, and meld. And I'm going really fast just so that you guys can get on with your business. You'll spend a little bit more time than I am. Just, you know, just doing this kind of quickly. So these pieces that I'm adding now are my branches. Yes, decorative, right? Like I'll have actual trees with actual branches coming up, but these are more importantly my struts. These are what are going to keep my base really strong, so that it's a firm foundation for everything that's going to go on top of it. Do this little guy next. So I would just continue to build in that manner. I'll hold this up so you can see what I've done until I have all my pieces in place. Scored and slipped better than they are right now. Okay, people at home, that's how far I've gotten. I've got a few more pieces that I have to add here. So now, and it's totally messing up my notebook. Oops. Let me think what a solution would be. You could put saran wrap over that and it would protect your notebook, especially if it's a notebook you need for another class. Or, hey, here's a better idea. Rip out that paper. That way it's not going to mess up your notebook. So when you're done for today, make sure that your footprint ends up on your tray. Snap a picture so I can see your progress for today. And then any additional coils that you have, especially people at home, since the raku is kind of precious, it's a limited resource, keep these, wrap them up in a damp paper towel, and then put them back in your raku bag so that you can utilize those coils maybe for struts or for something later on. Any additional coils that you didn't use, damp paper towel, sealed up bag. People who are here, same. Like if you have additional coils, wrap them up in a damp paper towel, keep them in a bag in your locker, but you will not have a block of clay that you keep in your locker. I'll have a block of fresh clay. It's actually over there on that wedging table. And it's okay to wedge raku on the stoneware wedging table because raku and stoneware are very compatible, very similar to each other. So that's fine. You can use the same tools and everything, just different slip. So this also really important that this doesn't dry out. So I would do a damp paper towel on this, bag it up, put it somewhere safe for tomorrow, and we'll start building vertically tomorrow. All right, so people who are here, head back to your spot and start sketching out and planning out a more concrete idea. There is one additional demo that I have for the people who are here. I'm going to touch base with the people who are at home, and then everyone will be able to get to work. Okay, so go ahead and check your raku slip. Start finalizing your sketches, and I'll be back to you in a moment. All right. Hi. Good morning. Okay, I'm going to stop recording and